Can you imagine the courage of the heroine in today's story? Imagine using your last strength to warn a king everyone is scared of. I personally would not have made it to the king. That is exactly what we're getting into today. But before we step into the Leakin King's territory, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. It helps our pack grow and ensure you never miss a new release. I want this comment section to be buzzing today. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you tuning in from? And while you're listening, timestamp your favorite parts. If a scene makes you laugh or swoon, let me know right when it happens. Are you ready? Let's get into the story. Blood tasted like copper and failure. Kayla's fingers clawed at mud and frost, each movement sending white-hot agony screaming through her shredded back. 20 feet. She'd crawled 20 feet in what felt like 20 years, and the massive iron gates ahead seemed to be mocking her, growing more distant with each agonizing inch forward. "You're going to die here," her wolf whispered, and for once, Kayla couldn't argue. Just another Omega who thought she mattered. "No," she rasped, even though speaking sent blood bubbling over her lips. Behind her, rogue laughter echoed through the trees. They were giving her hope, letting her think she might make it, just so the despair would taste sweeter when she finally collapsed. It was the kind of casual cruelty that apex predators reserved for prey too broken to provide a real chase. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd left her alive long enough to see the Blackthorn gates. The guard towers loomed above her now, and Kayla could hear shouting, the rapid-fire commands of soldiers mobilizing. Strong hands suddenly gripped her shoulders, rolling her onto a ruined back, and the scream that tore from her throat could have shattered glass. "Holy fuck," someone breathed. "Sir, she's—" "I can see what she is," a voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Deep, commanding, with an edge that made even Kayla's dying wolf sit up and pay attention. "Get the healers. Now." Kayla's vision was a kaleidoscope of shadows and swimming faces, but she forced her hand up, grabbed leather and steel, and something warm beneath. The fabric was too fine, the presence too powerful, but she was beyond caring about protocol or rank or the fact that an Omega should never touch an Alpha without permission. "Ambush," she gasped, and the word came out pink and wet. "Tomorrow, dawn, 300 rogues, Eastern packs, children." Golden eyes filled her vision, not the pale gold of low-ranking alphas, but the deep, molten amber of a king. They widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise on a face carved from granite and authority. "The children," Kayla insisted, even as darkness crept in from the edges. "They'll kill the children, please." "I promise," the voice said, and there was something in those two words that felt like a blood oath. "Stay with me. Stay." But Kayla was already falling into the dark, her last conscious thought a desperate prayer that she'd been fast enough, coherent enough, believed enough. The world went black, and somewhere in the distance, the Alpha King roared for his warriors. 6 weeks earlier, the Silvercrest pack had a peculiar tradition. They measured a wolf's worth by the brightness of their eyes during the first shift. Golden eyes meant alpha blood. Silver meant beta. And dull gray? Well, that meant you were destined to scrub floors and keep your head down. Kayla's eyes had been the color of dishwater. She'd known it the moment she'd completed her first transformation at 13, had seen the disappointment flicker across her mother's face before the woman masked it with resigned acceptance. In Silvercrest, your eye color was your destiny, as immutable as the phases of the moon and twice as predictable. For 23 years, she'd perfected the art of invisibility. She served meals without making eye contact, folded laundry without complaint, and mastered the crucial skill of becoming wallpaper whenever higher-ranking wolves entered a room. It was a survival strategy that had worked remarkably well, until the day she made the catastrophic mistake of having a fated mate. Marcus Thornwood, the pack's beta and resident heartthrob, had been her mate. Or rather, he'd been her mate for approximately 45 seconds before he laughed in her face and uttered the words that would echo in her nightmares. "The moon goddess must have been drunk when she paired us." The rejection ceremony had been mercifully brief and brutally public. Marcus had made sure every pack member witnessed his dismissal of the defective Omega, as if rejecting her wasn't enough. He needed to ensure her humiliation was pack-wide entertainment. Someone had actually brought popcorn. Popcorn. Because watching an Omega's soul get shattered was apparently the Silvercrest equivalent of movie night. Kayla had stood there in the pack's central square, feeling the mate bond snap like a rotted rope, and had thought with remarkable clarity, well, at least it can't get worse than this. The moon goddess, it turned out, had a wicked sense of humor. The first vision hit her 3 days later while she was elbow-deep in dishwater. One moment she was scrubbing grease off plates, the next she was drowning in images of blood and screaming and a young boy falling through splintered wood. She dropped an entire stack of the Alpha's good china, which had earned her a week of extra duties and a lecture about knowing your place. But the vision had been so vivid, so real, that Kayla couldn't shake it. She'd seen the Alpha's youngest son, Derek, a spoiled 12-year-old who treated Omegas like furniture, falling through rotted planks in the old barn on the eastern edge of Pack Lands. She'd seen the angle of his leg when he landed, heard the crack of bone, felt his fear like it was her own. For 2 days, she'd debated saying something. Omegas didn't have visions. Omegas didn't have gifts. They had dulled eyes and limited prospects and the good sense to keep their mouths shut. But the image of Derek's pale face, twisted in pain, wouldn't leave her alone. So she'd done the unthinkable. She'd approached him. "Excuse me," she'd stuttered, her eyes fixed firmly on the ground as Derek lounged against the pack house with his friends. "I'm sorry to bother you, but the old barn. On the east side. Maybe don't." "Maybe don't what?" Derek had interrupted, his voice dripping with the kind of casual cruelty that came naturally to teenagers with too much power. "Maybe don't tell me what to do?" "You're right. Good call, Omega." His friends had laughed, and Kayla had retreated, her face burning with familiar shame. She'd tried. That was enough, wasn't it? 3 hours later, Derek had been rushed to the pack hospital with a broken leg and a bruised ego, his dramatic rescue from the collapsed barn becoming the talk of Silvercrest. And people started looking at Kayla differently. The second vision came a week later. Then a third. Then they started coming faster, each one more violent than the last, until Kayla couldn't close her eyes without seeing death and blood and the kind of coordinated chaos that spoke of planning and patience and an enemy far more dangerous than random rogues. She saw them gathering in the darkwood forest, wolves with matted fur and feral eyes, but led by something organized, something intelligent. They weren't the usual desperate outcasts looking for easy prey. They moved with military precision, took orders from a scarred alpha who spoke of revenge and reclamation, of taking back what the legitimate packs had stolen. They were an army, and they were coming for blood. When Kayla tried to report her visions to the pack council, she was laughed out of the room. Literally laughed out. The sound had followed her down the corridor like a pack of hyenas. An Omega claiming to have prophetic abilities? Marcus had sneered from his position at the council table, looking devastatingly handsome and utterly uninterested in her warnings. This is desperate attention-seeking from a wolf who can't accept her place. First, she couldn't accept my rejection. Now she's invented magical powers. What's next? Should we make her pack oracle? The council had chuckled appreciatively at his wit, and Kayla had felt something inside her crack. Not break, she'd been broken before. This was different. This was the moment when survival instinct transformed into something sharper, something that tasted like fury and smelled like smoke. "I'm not lying," she'd said quietly, and the room had fallen silent at her audacity. Omegas didn't talk back. Ever. I've seen it. 300 rogues, maybe more. They're organized, trained. They're coming during the autumn gathering when our strongest wolves will be. Enough. Alpha Silvercrest had boomed, his patience clearly exhausted. You've predicted a few accidents, and now you think you're blessed by the moon goddess herself? Guards, escort Miss Gray back to the kitchens where she belongs. As they'd hauled her out, Kayla had caught Marcus's eye. He'd been smiling, not cruelly, but with the kind of pitying amusement reserved for delusional children who insisted monsters lived under their beds. That night, the vision had come again, more vivid than ever. She'd seen the gathering, dozens of packs assembled in Blackthorn territory for the autumn moon celebration, their strongest warriors relaxed and drinking, their guard down because they felt safe in numbers. She'd seen the rogues pouring through breached walls like water through a cracked dam. She'd seen children screaming, nurseries burning, and blood staining the frost-white ground. And she'd seen the face of the scarred alpha who led them, heard his words echo through her mind. We strike when they celebrate. When they're drunk on peace and stupid with security. We show them that outcasts remember. Outcasts plan. And outcasts take back what's ours. Kayla had woken up sobbing, her sheets drenched with sweat, her wolf howling warnings that no one would ever hear. But as dawn broke through her tiny window, something shifted in her. Maybe it was the lingering effects of mate bond rejection making her reckless. Maybe it was 23 years of being invisible finally reaching critical mass. Or maybe, just maybe, the moon goddess really had been drunk when she'd made Kayla, but had sobered up enough to give her one chance at mattering. 3 days before the autumn moon gathering, Kayla made her decision. If her own pack wouldn't listen, perhaps someone else would. The Alpha King Vincent Blackthorn was legendary, a ruler who'd united 12 fractious packs under one banner through a combination of strategic brilliance and the kind of raw power that made even alphas think twice about challenging him. He was attending the gathering, along with his elite guard and several allied pack leaders. It was also, according to Kayla's visions, the exact moment the rogues planned to strike. She'd stolen food from the kitchens, adding thief to her growing list of Omega transgressions, packed what little she owned into a canvas bag that had seen better decades, and slipped away from Silvercrest under the cover of darkness. No dramatic goodbyes, no tearful farewells. When you were invisible, leaving was easy. Most people wouldn't even notice she was gone until the breakfast dishes started piling up. The journey to Blackthorn territory was brutal. 3 days through wilderness that seemed personally offended by her existence, where every mile felt like 10, and the cold worked its way into her bones with malicious intent. Her Omega wolf was weak, unsuited for sustained travel, and by the second day Kayla was running on pure stubbornness and the haunting images of massacred pack members. She rationed her stolen food like a miser, slept in hollow trees that smelled of old death and older fear, and kept moving even when her muscles screamed and her wolf begged her to just lie down and rest. Just for a moment. Just until the sun came up. But Kayla knew that if she stopped, she wouldn't start again. On the third day, as the Blackthorn borders finally came into view through the trees, she'd felt something like hope kindle in her chest. She'd made it. Against all odds, the invisible Omega had. That's when they'd found her. The rogue scouts materialized from the shadows like nightmares given form, 3 males with matted fur and eyes that gleamed with predatory delight. They'd been patrolling the perimeter, checking for weaknesses in Blackthorn's defenses, and had stumbled across something even better than intelligence. Prey. Well, the largest one had purred, circling her with the lazy confidence of a wolf who knew his victim had nowhere to run. What's a little Omega doing so far from home? You lost, sweetheart? Kayla had backed against a tree, her wolf whimpering in terror. Please, she'd whispered. I'm just passing through. I don't want any trouble. Trouble? The rogue had laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Baby, you're already in it. They'd toyed with her at first, letting her run, chasing her through the trees like it was all just a grand game. When she'd shifted, hoping her wolf could outpace them, they'd herded her like sheep, nipping at her flanks, driving her in circles until exhaustion made her stumble. The first claw rake across her back had made her yelp and crash into a tree. The second had sent her tumbling down a ravine, her body slamming against rocks and roots until she couldn't tell which parts of her were broken and which just wished they were. She'd shifted back to human form on impact, her wolf too weak to maintain the change, and had lain there in the dirt, watching the 3 rogues descend the slope with the casual grace of executioners. This is almost too easy, one of them complained. Commander said no survivors near the borders, another replied, unsheathing claws that glinted in the afternoon light. Quick and quiet. We're not here to play. I'm going to die, Kayla had thought with startling clarity. I'm going to die, and no one will ever know I tried. But as the first rogue raised his claws, something inside Kayla rebelled. Not her wolf, That pathetic creature was already whimpering its surrender. Something deeper, something that tasted like destiny and smelled like burning bridges. She'd rolled, the claws missing her throat by inches, and scrambled forward on hands and knees. The rogues had laughed, thinking she was trying to escape, but Kayla wasn't running anymore. She was crawling toward those gates. Every instinct screamed at her to stop, to accept the inevitable, but Kayla had spent 23 years accepting things. She'd accepted her gray eyes and Omega status. She'd accepted Marcus's rejection and the pack's mockery. She'd accepted being invisible, being nothing, being less than the dirt under their boots. She was done accepting. The rogue's second attack had been less playful, more irritated. Claws raked across her back, tearing through skin and muscle like she was made of paper. Another blow caught her ribs, and Kayla heard something crack. Pain became her entire world, each breath a negotiation with agony, each movement an act of defiance against a body that was shutting down. But she could see the gates now. Through tears and blood and failing vision, she could see the blackthorn gates rising before her like salvation carved from iron and stone. The rogues realized their mistake too late. Shit, one of them hissed. She's going to stop her if she reaches those gates. But Kayla was already there, her blood-slick hand reaching up, grabbing leather and steel and something warm. The world was a blur of golden eyes and shouted commands, and the blessed darkness rising to claim her. Ambush, she gasped. Tomorrow, dawn, 300 rogues, Eastern packs, children. I promise, a voice said, deep and sure and absolutely certain. Stay with me. Stay. But Kayla was done staying. She'd delivered her warning. She'd crawled through hell and survived just long enough to matter, even if only for these few crucial seconds. As consciousness fled, her last thought was surprisingly peaceful. I did it. Whatever happens now, at least I tried. The darkness swallowed her whole, and somewhere above, the Alpha King was already roaring orders to his warriors. Chapter 2. The King's Vow. Vincent Blackthorne had lived for 243 years, had fought in 17 wars, and had seen enough death to fill several lifetimes. Very little surprised him anymore. The half-dead Omega clutching his jacket with bloody fingers while rasping warnings about an ambush? That was surprising. Sir, she's Omega, his head of security, Darius, stated the obvious as healers rushed forward with a stretcher. Could be a trap. Rogues might have. Then they picked a really dramatic delivery method, Vincent interrupted, kneeling beside the unconscious girl. Up close, the damage was extensive, claw marks carved deep trenches across her back, her ribs were clearly broken, and she'd lost enough blood to paint the ground beneath her a disturbing shade of crimson. No rogue would shred their own operative this badly just for theater. He'd caught her scent the moment his guards had started shouting Omega, yes, but beneath the blood and fear was something else. Something that made his wolf sit up and growl with interest. Old magic, the kind that ran in bloodlines thought extinct, the kind that gave certain wolves gifts the modern packs had forgotten existed. Oracle blood. Get her to the medical wing, Vincent commanded, rising to his full height. Priority 1. I want your best healers on her, and I want her alive and conscious as soon as physically possible. Darius, mobilize the guard. If she's telling the truth, 300 rogues could flatten the Eastern packs before we even knew they were there, Darius finished grimly. The gathering. They'd hit us during the gathering when everyone's drunk and celebrating. It's tactically sound, Vincent admitted, his mind already running through defensive scenarios. We're vulnerable during celebrations. Guards are relaxed, civilians are everywhere, and our strongest warriors are scattered across the festival grounds instead of positioned strategically. He watched as healers carefully lifted the Omega onto a stretcher, her head lolling to the side, blood still seeping through hasty bandages. Which means if she's right, we have less than 12 hours to prepare. And if she's wrong, another guard ventured. If this is just some Omega's hallucination or attention-seeking then we waste some resources preparing for an attack that never comes, Vincent said flatly. But if she's right and we do nothing, hundreds die. Including children. She specifically mentioned children. His jaw tightened. I've seen what organized rogues can do to nurseries. I won't see it again. The memory flashed through his mind unbidden, another pack, another lifetime ago, when he'd arrived too late to stop the slaughter. The small bodies, the crying that had stopped too suddenly, the mothers who'd fought tooth and claw and died anyway. Never again. He'd built his reputation on that promise. Never again. I want scout teams in the Darkwood Forest within the hour, Vincent ordered, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made even seasoned warriors snap to attention. Full stealth protocols. If there's a rogue army gathering, I want to know numbers, leadership structure, armaments, everything. Get Ambassador Chen from the Eastern Pacts, tell him it's urgent. And someone find out where this Omega came from and why the hell she crawled through rogue-infested territory to warn us about an attack on packs that aren't even hers. As his guards dispersed with military efficiency, Vincent followed the healers carrying the mysterious Omega toward the medical wing. She looked impossibly small on the stretcher, her skin so pale it was almost translucent, dark hair matted with blood and forest debris. She'd used her last strength to warn them. A complete stranger, an Omega from a pack that clearly hadn't valued her enough to listen to her warnings, had nearly died to save wolves she'd never met. The Silvercrest Omega had more courage than most alphas Vincent knew. Curious? His sister Lyra materialized at his elbow, her silver eyes gleaming with the kind of knowing amusement that made Vincent's hackles rise. As his second and the pack's lead strategist, Lyra had an uncanny ability to read people. It was useful in negotiations and deeply annoying in family interactions. I'm curious about the 300 rogues she warned us about, Vincent said evenly. Sure you are. Lyra's smirk could have cut glass. Nothing to do with the fact that your wolf practically purred when you caught her scent. Haven't seen you react to anyone like that since. Don't, Vincent cut her off. This isn't about, she's injured. She's under our protection. That's all. Under your personal protection, Lyra corrected. You ordered Priority 1 treatment. That's usually reserved for diplomats and family members. This girl is a nobody Omega from Silvercrest. You've never even been to Silvercrest. Vincent shot his sister a look that would have made lesser wolves submit on the spot. Lyra just grinned wider. I'm just saying, she continued blithely, the last time you showed this much interest in someone, you married her. Elena was a political alliance, Vincent said, his voice carefully neutral. And she's been dead for 60 years. I'm not looking for this isn't. The Omega warned us of an attack. I'm following protocol. You're following something, Lyra murmured, but mercifully dropped the subject as they entered the medical wing. The chaos inside was controlled but intense. Head healer Margaret, a formidable she-wolf who'd terrified generations of patients into health, was barking orders at her assistants while examining the Omega's injuries with clinical efficiency. Broken ribs, severe lacerations, possible internal bleeding, Margaret rattled off without looking up. She's malnourished, dehydrated, and has been running herself into the ground for at least 3 days. Her wolf is weak, Omega stock, minimal healing capacity. Whoever did this wanted her to suffer. Can you save her? Vincent asked. Margaret glanced at him, one eyebrow raised. I'm offended you have to ask. Of course I can save her. But she's going to be unconscious for a while. Whatever you need to ask her will have to wait. How long? Hours. Maybe longer if her wolf is too weak to assist the healing process. Margaret's expression softened fractionally. She fought hard to get here, Vincent. Girls got more determination than sense, crawling all that way with those injuries. Whatever she has to tell you must be important. It is, Vincent said quietly. She's warning us of an attack. 300 rogues, targeting the gathering. Margaret's hands stilled for a fraction of a second before resuming their work. Then you'd better prepare for war. I'll have her ready to talk as soon as physically possible. Vincent nodded and retreated to the corner of the room, watching as healers worked with practiced efficiency to save the life of an Omega who'd sacrificed everything to deliver a warning. Why? The question gnawed at him. Omega wolves were notoriously risk-averse, their survival instincts honed by generations of being at the bottom of pack hierarchies. They didn't embark on suicide missions through hostile territory. They didn't challenge 3 rogues while half dead from exhaustion. They didn't grab alpha kings and rasp warnings with their dying breath. This Omega was either incredibly brave or incredibly broken. Possibly both. Vincent, Darius's voice crackled through his earpiece. Scout teams are reporting back. You're going to want to hear this. Vincent stepped into the hallway, leaving the healers to their work. Report. Darkwood Forest is crawling with rogues, Darius said grimly. We're counting at least 250, maybe more. They're organized, well-armed, and they have a command structure. This isn't random outcasts, Vincent. This is an army. Ice slid down Vincent's spine. The Omega was right. The Omega saved our asses, Darius corrected. If she hadn't warned us, they would have hit us at dawn during the festival. We would have been slaughtered. Vincent's hand clenched into a fist. Change of plans. Cancel the festival, fortify the compound, and get every warrior we have on the walls. I want the Eastern Pack leaders in my strategy room in 30 minutes. We're going to hit these bastards before they hit us. Sir. Darius hesitated. What about the Omega? What about her? She's from Silvercrest. Technically, she should be returned to her pack after. No, Vincent said, the word coming out with more force than he'd intended. His wolf growled agreement, the sound resonating through his chest. She stays here. Under my protection. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. There was a long pause. Then Darius chuckled. Understood, sir. I'll make sure she's protected. Vincent ignored the amusement in his head of security's voice and returned to the medical wing. The Omega, he really needed to find out her name, was now bandaged and hooked up to various tubes and monitors that beeped rhythmically. Margaret had cleaned the blood from her face, revealing delicate features and a jawline that spoke of quiet stubbornness. She's stable, Margaret informed him. Healing nicely, all things considered. Should be conscious within the hour. Good. Vincent pulled up a chair beside the bed, settling in to wait. I'll be here when she wakes up. Margaret's expression flickered with something knowing. Of course you will. I'll send someone with coffee. Something tells me this is going to be a long night. As the healer bustled away, Vincent found himself studying the sleeping Omega with more attention than he'd given anyone in decades. She looked peaceful now, the pain lines smoothing from her face, her breathing evening out as the healing took hold. She'd fought so hard to reach them. Had crawled through agony and death to deliver a warning to strangers. And she'd grabbed him specifically, not the guards, not the first person she'd seen, but had somehow known to grab the one person who could mobilize an entire kingdom's defenses. Oracle blood. It had to be. The old magic that ran in certain bloodlines, granting visions and prophecies and the kind of sight that transcended normal wolf senses. The Pax thought that bloodline had died out centuries ago, diluted through generations of interbreeding until only the faintest traces remained. But this Omega had the gift strong enough to see an attack days before it happened. Strong enough to know exactly where to go, who to grab, what to say to be believed. Who are you? Vincent murmured to the unconscious girl. And why did your pack let you go? As if in answer, her eyelids fluttered, and for a brief moment, he caught a glimpse of gray eyes before she slipped back into healing sleep. Gray eyes. Omega coloring in Silvercrest, if he remembered their ridiculous hierarchy correctly. Which meant this girl had been invisible her entire life, dismissed as worthless based on genetics she couldn't control. Fury kindled in Vincent's chest, hot and protective and entirely inappropriate for someone he'd met minutes ago while she was bleeding out at his gates. But watching her sleep, knowing she'd nearly died to save his people, Vincent made a decision that would change everything. When this Omega woke up, she would never be unprotected again. He'd failed to save others in the past. He wouldn't fail her. Hours passed. Vincent sent and received reports. Scouts confirmed rogue numbers. Strategy sessions planned the counterattack. Pack leaders arrived and were briefed on the situation. Through it all, he remained in the medical wing, his presence a silent vigil beside the sleeping Omega. Lyra poked her head in around midnight. The Eastern Alphas want to know who provided the intelligence. They're calling her a hero, asking if they can meet her, thank her personally. Later, Vincent said. After she's healed. After she's safe. You promised her, didn't you? Lyra's voice was soft now, understanding. When she warned you, you promised to protect her. I promised, Vincent confirmed, the words feeling like a blood oath even now. And I keep my promises. I know you do. Lyra studied him for a long moment. She's lucky she found you. Most alphas wouldn't have listened to an Omega's warnings. Most alphas are idiots. Vincent finally tore his gaze from the sleeping girl to look at his sister. How's the situation? Under control. We'll strike at dawn. Hit them before they can reorganize after their scouts don't report back. With surprise on our side and their leadership exposed, we can end this quickly. Lyra's expression turned grim. But Vincent, there are at least 300 rogues out there. Even with preparation, some of our people will die. I know. The weight of leadership settled familiar and heavy on his shoulders. But without this Omega's warning, we all would have died. Children, elders, everyone. She saved us. Now I'm going to make sure her sacrifice wasn't for nothing. As Lyra left to continue preparations, Vincent returned his attention to the Omega. Her breathing had deepened, strengthened, the healing magic doing its work. Wake up soon, he told her quietly. I need to know your name. Need to thank you properly for what you've done. And need to make sure you understand that you're not going back to whatever pack was stupid enough to let you leave. Her fingers twitched, just the slightest movement, but Vincent caught it. She was starting to surface from the healing sleep, her consciousness clawing its way back toward the light. He settled in to wait, coffee growing cold beside him, the weight of his promise sitting comfortable and right in his chest. When she woke, everything would change. He could feel it the way wolves sometimes felt weather patterns shifting, the way oracles saw the future unfolding in their minds. This Omega had crawled into his territory, his protection, his life. And Vincent Blackthorne always protected what was his. Chapter 3. The Oracle Awakens. Kayla woke up to the realization that being dead was surprisingly comfortable. Heaven had soft sheets, apparently, and beeping monitors, and smelled distinctly like antiseptic and pine forest, which seemed like an odd aesthetic choice for the afterlife. But who was she to judge? You're not dead. The voice made her eyes snap open, a feat that required significantly more effort than it should have. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar, decorated with elegant wooden beams instead of the water-stained drywall of her quarters back in Silvercrest. Not heaven, then. Which meant, oh God, Kayla croaked, her throat feeling like she'd gargled broken glass. I made it. The gates. Memory crashed over her like a wave. The rogues, the crawling, the golden eyes staring down at her as she'd gasped her warning. The attack. Did you, are they? Handled, the voice assured her, and Kayla finally managed to turn her head far enough to see its owner. The Alpha King sat beside her bed like he had all the time in the world, his massive frame somehow folded into a chair that looked comically small beneath him. He was exactly as the stories described, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and golden eyes that seemed to see straight through you. But the stories hadn't mentioned the silver at his temples, or the way his presence filled the room like gravity itself bent around him. This was a wolf who could end you without breaking a sweat, and would probably apologize for the mess afterward. Your Majesty, Kayla stammered, trying to sit up and immediately regretting it as pain lanced through her ribs. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Lie back down before Margaret has both our heads, Vincent interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. You've been unconscious for 8 hours. Your back is still healing, and according to my head healer, you're a miracle of stubbornness for being alive at all. Kayla sank back against the pillows, her heart hammering. The Alpha King was sitting beside her bed. The ruler of 12 packs was watching her with an intensity that made her want to crawl under the covers and hide. This was so far beyond her social competence it wasn't even funny. The attack, she managed, focusing on what mattered. The rogues. 300 of them in Darkwood Forest. They were planning to strike at dawn during the gathering. They had it all planned out, and I tried to warn my pack, but they didn't believe me, and Kayla. She stopped mid-ramble, shocked he knew her name. We found them, Vincent said quietly. Your warning gave us time to mobilize. We struck first, hit them at dawn in their own camp, eliminated their leadership, and scattered the rest. Some escaped, but the army is broken. No one died. Well, he corrected with grim satisfaction. No one on our side died. Relief hit Kayla so hard she felt tears prick her eyes. The children? The nurseries? Protected. Safe. Because of you. Vincent leaned forward, his golden eyes intense. You saved hundreds of lives, Kayla. Maybe thousands. Those rogues had detailed plans for the gathering, maps, guard rotations, everything. Without your warning, it would have been a massacre. Oh, Kayla whispered, not quite sure what to do with that information. She'd never saved anyone before. She'd barely managed to save herself on most days. That's good. I'm glad that you listened. Most people don't. Most people are fools. Vincent's expression hardened. I did some checking. Silvercrest Pack reported you to their council 3 times with warnings about the attack. They dismissed you as an attention-seeking Omega having delusions after mate rejection. He paused, his jaw tightening. They were going to let hundreds die because they couldn't imagine an Omega might have a gift worth listening to. Kayla flinched at the mention of her rejection. Of course he knew. Alpha King would have demanded a full background check the moment she'd collapsed at his gates. He probably knew about her gray eyes, her invisible status, Marcus's very public dismissal of the defective Omega the moon goddess had cursed him with. They weren't entirely wrong, she said quietly. I am broken. The rejection did something to me, triggered the visions somehow. And Omegas aren't supposed to have gifts. It's not. It doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense, Vincent countered. You have oracle blood. The old magic that runs in certain bloodlines grants them sight beyond normal wolf senses. It's rare, extremely rare, and it's been diluted over generations. But every now and then, it manifests strongly in someone. Usually triggered by trauma. His gaze softened fractionally. Mate rejection would qualify as trauma. Oracle blood. The term sent a shiver down Kayla's spine. She'd heard stories about oracles, the old wolves who'd guided packs with prophecy and vision, who'd been revered as blessed by the moon goddess herself. But those were myths, legends from a time before packs had structures and hierarchies and color-based caste systems. I'm not special, Kayla protested weakly. I'm just an Omega who gets headaches and sees things that haven't happened yet. That's not a gift, it's a liability. It's the gift that saved my people, Vincent said flatly. And it makes you extremely valuable. Which brings me to why I've been sitting here waiting for you to wake up instead of celebrating our victory with my warriors. Dread pulled in Kayla's stomach. Valuable. That word never meant anything good for Omegas. Valuable meant useful, and useful meant being used until you broke, then discarded when something better came along. I'm not going back to Silvercrest, she blurted before he could continue. I know I technically ran away, and they probably want me back to punish me for stealing food and causing trouble, but I can't, I won't go back there. You can kill me if you want, but please don't send me back. Vincent's eyebrows rose. Kill you? Why the hell would I kill the Omega who saved my kingdom? Because I'm no one, Kayla said desperately, the words tumbling out faster now. I'm a rejected, broken Omega with gray eyes and no status and pack that doesn't want me. I'm more trouble than I'm worth, and I understand if you need to make an example of me or return me to avoid political complications with Silvercrest, but I'm begging you, please don't. Kayla. Vincent's voice cut through her panic like a blade. Stop. Breathe. No one is sending you anywhere you don't want to go. She gulped air, her chest heaving, everything inside her screaming that this was a trap, that alphas didn't just let Omegas go, that there had to be a catch. When you collapsed at my gates, Vincent continued, his tone gentler now, you used your last strength to warn me of an attack. You grabbed my jacket with bloody hands and gasped out information that would save hundreds of lives, including children you'd never met. And I made you a promise. Kayla's brow furrowed. She remembered the golden eyes, the deep voice, the feeling of safety right before darkness claimed her. But the words themselves were fuzzy, lost in the haze of pain and approaching unconsciousness. What promise? I told you I'd protect you, Vincent said simply. And I keep my promises. So here's what's going to happen, Kayla Gray of Silvercrest. You're going to stay in Blackthorn territory under my personal protection. You're going to recover from your injuries, and you're going to help me understand these visions of yours so we can prevent future attacks. In return, you'll be given quarters in the royal compound, access to our libraries and training facilities, and a stipend befitting your new position as. He paused, considering court oracle. Kayla stared at him. Court, what? Oracle, Vincent repeated patiently. We're reviving the old tradition. Every major pack used to have one a wolf with the sight who could warn of dangers and guide decisions. We got lazy, forgot the old ways, relied too much on strength and not enough on wisdom. You're going to change that. But I'm an Omega, Kayla protested, her voice rising. I can't, no one will listen to me. I have gray eyes and broken bonds, and I don't know anything about being an oracle. I just see things sometimes, and they're horrible, and I can't control them, and... Then you'll learn, Vincent said, and there was steel beneath the kindness now. You have a gift, Kayla. A powerful one. And you've already proven you're brave enough to act on your visions even when everyone tells you you're crazy. That's exactly what I need. What my kingdom needs. He leaned forward, those golden eyes pinning her in place. I'm offering you a choice, he said quietly. Stay here, under my protection, and help me keep our people safe. Or I can arrange safe passage anywhere you want to go, any pack, any territory. I won't force you to stay somewhere you don't want to be. But understand this. If you leave my protection, I can't guarantee your safety. And your former pack is already demanding your return. Ice flooded Kayla's veins. Silvercrest wants me back? Alpha Silvercrest sent a very official letter this morning, Vincent said with obvious distaste, claiming you stole property, abandoned your duties, and caused pack destabilization with your false visions. He's demanding your immediate return for disciplinary action, which was pack speak for punishment severe enough to make an example of her. They dismissed her warnings, laughed at her gift, and now that she'd been proven right, now that an Alpha King was taking her seriously, they wanted to drag her back and make her suffer for daring to be correct. The cruelty of it stole Kayla's breath. What did you tell them? She whispered. Vincent's smile was all teeth and no warmth. I told Alpha Silvercrest that Kayla Gray is under my personal protection as an honored guest of Blackthorn territory. I told him that anyone attempting to remove her from my lands would be considered an act of war. And I told him that if he had a problem with that, he was welcome to come discuss it with me personally. He paused. He has not accepted my invitation. You declared war on my pack? For me, I didn't declare war. I made my position clear. There's a difference. Vincent's expression softened. But yes, Kayla. For you. You saved hundreds of my people. You crawled through hell to warn strangers of danger. You're the kind of wolf who deserves protection, not punishment. Tears were sliding down Kayla's cheeks now, hot and unfamiliar. When was the last time someone had protected her? When was the last time anyone had thought she deserved kindness instead of kicks? Why? The word came out broken. Why do you care? You don't even know me. I know enough, Vincent said quietly. I know you're brave. I know you're selfless. I know you have a gift that terrifies you, but you use it anyway because you can't stand the thought of people getting hurt when you might have prevented it. That's more than I can say for half the alphas I've met. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. You deserve better than what Silvercrest gave you. Let me provide it. Kayla found herself nodding before her brain had fully processed the offer. Stay here. Be protected. Be valued for her gift instead of punished for it. Learn to understand the visions instead of drowning in their chaos. It sounded too good to be true, which usually meant it was. But looking into the Alpha King's golden eyes, seeing the absolute certainty there, Kayla felt something unfamiliar kindle in her chest. Something that might have been hope if hope hadn't been beaten out of her years ago. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. I'll be your court oracle. I'll try. That's all I ask. Vincent stood, his presence somehow less overwhelming now that Kayla had agreed. Rest. Heal. Margaret will have my head if I tire you out. We can discuss details once you're stronger. He was almost to the door when Kayla found her voice again. Your Majesty? He turned, one eyebrow raised. Thank you, she said simply. For listening. For believing me. For She gestured helplessly at the comfortable room, the medical care, the promise of protection, all of this. No one's ever, thank you. Vincent's expression gentled into something that might have been a smile on a less intimidating face. You saved my kingdom, Kayla. This is the least I can do. Sleep now. Tomorrow, we start teaching you to be the oracle you were always meant to be. As the door closed behind him, Kayla lay back against the pillows, her mind spinning. Court oracle. Protected by the Alpha King himself. Valued for her gift instead of punished for her weakness. It felt like a dream. The kind that would shatter the moment she fully woke up. But the pain in her healing ribs was real. The soft sheets were real. And the memory of golden eyes promising protection felt more solid than anything Kayla had known in her entire invisible life. For the first time in 23 years, Kayla Gray fell asleep feeling something other than fear. She felt hope. And maybe, just maybe, she felt like she might finally matter. Chapter 4. The Price of Prophecy. 3 weeks later, Kayla discovered that being court oracle came with responsibilities that made her old life of invisible servitude look downright peaceful. Again, Lyra commanded, her silver eyes gleaming with the kind of patience that was actually thinly veiled sadism. Channel the vision. Don't fight it. Let it flow through you instead of drowning in it. Kayla gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her forehead as another wave of images crashed through her mind. Fire. Blood. A child's scream cutting off too suddenly. She gasped and pulled back, her hands shaking against the wooden table. I can't, she panted. It's too much. Too violent. I can't control. You can, Lyra interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. You've been seeing visions for weeks now. The difference is you're no longer being pulled under by them. You're learning to swim. Swimming implies I'm not actively drowning, Kayla muttered, but she closed her eyes again, reaching for the thread of vision that lingered at the edges of her consciousness. Since arriving at Blackthorn, Kayla's life had transformed so completely she sometimes forgot who she'd been before. Gone was the invisible Omega who scrubbed floors and kept her head down. In her place was, well, she wasn't sure yet. But she was learning. The quarters Vincent had provided were larger than her entire family's dwelling back in Silvercrest, a suite of rooms in the royal compound with actual windows that looked out over the training grounds. She had a bed that didn't creak, clothes that weren't hand-me-downs, and meals that didn't consist of whatever scraps the higher-ranking wolves had left behind. But the most shocking change was how people treated her. Good morning, Oracle, guards said when she passed. Let me get that for you, pack members offered when she struggled with heavy doors. Your insights were invaluable, counselors told her after she'd warned of a border skirmish 3 days before it happened. It was surreal, terrifying, and occasionally wonderful. Lyra had taken charge of her training with the enthusiasm of someone who'd finally found a project worthy of her considerable talents. The Alpha King's sister was terrifying in her own right, a strategic genius with a sharp tongue and absolutely no patience for self-pity. Oracle blood runs strong in you, Lyra had explained during their first session. But you've been suppressing it your whole life, treating your visions like curses instead of gifts. We need to rebuild your relationship with your abilities from the ground up. Which apparently meant daily training sessions that left Kayla exhausted and trembling, her mind stretched in directions she hadn't known existed. There, Lyra said now, her voice cutting through Kayla's concentration. You're doing it. The vision is coming clearer, isn't it? She was right. Instead of the usual chaotic flood of images, Kayla could feel the vision taking shape, structured, ordered, comprehensible. She saw a merchant caravan, 3 days south. Saw bandits waiting in the mountain pass. Saw the attack that would leave 5 dead and a dozen injured. I see them, Kayla whispered, her eyes still closed. Mountain pass. Southern trade route. Maybe 60 miles from here? There are 5 attackers. No, 6. One's hiding in the rocks above the pass. When? 4 days from now. Mid-afternoon. Kayla opened her eyes, gasping as the vision released her. We can stop it. If we send guards, we can intercept them before. Already done, Vincent's voice came from the doorway, making Kayla jump. The Alpha King leaned against the frame, his arms crossed, golden eyes gleaming with approval. I sent a patrol south this morning based on your earlier warning. They'll reach the pass with a day to spare. You believed me? Kayla asked, still not quite used to that concept. You've been right about every vision you've had since arriving, Vincent pointed out reasonably. Why would I doubt you now? Because oracles aren't supposed to be Omega, Kayla said, voicing the fear that kept her up at night. Because this whole thing could be a fluke, or temporary, or you could accept that you're exactly what I knew you were the moment you grabbed my jacket with bloody hands, Vincent interrupted, pushing off the doorframe. Powerful. Gifted. Essential to the safety of this kingdom. He crossed to where she sat, and Kayla fought the urge to shrink back. Not from fear. Vincent had never given her reason to fear him, but from the sheer intensity of his presence. Being near the Alpha King was like standing next to a barely contained wildfire. Beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Take a break, Vincent told Lyra. I need to speak with our oracle privately. Lyra's eyebrows rose, but she gathered her materials without comment. As she passed Vincent, she murmured something too low for Kayla to hear that made the Alpha King's jaw tighten. Then they were alone, and the room suddenly felt much smaller. You've been avoiding the pack gatherings, Vincent observed, settling into the chair Lyra had vacated. The warriors want to meet you. Thank you personally for the warning that saved their lives. Kayla twisted her hands in her lap. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because I'm still an Omega, Kayla said quietly. Gray eyes, weak wolf, broken mate bond. All the court oracle titles in the world don't change my genetics. And pack gatherings are for people who belong. I don't belong anywhere. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentler than she'd heard it before. You know what I see when I look at you, Kayla? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. I see a wolf who crawled through hell to save strangers. Who survived 3 rogues with nothing but determination and spite. Who wakes up every morning and pushes herself to master a gift that terrifies her because she can't stand the thought of failing people who need her. He leaned forward. I see someone who belongs in my pack more than half the alphas born into it. You have to say that, Kayla whispered. You're the Alpha King. You're supposed to be diplomatic and... I'm the Alpha King, Vincent interrupted, which means I don't have to say anything I don't mean. If I thought you were useless, you'd know it. If I thought your gift was a fluke, I wouldn't waste Lyra's time training you. And if I thought you didn't belong here. He paused, his golden eyes intense. I wouldn't have threatened war with your former pack to keep you. Kayla's breath caught. She'd been trying not to think about that, about how Vincent had essentially declared her off-limits to Silvercrest, how he'd placed her under his personal protection despite barely knowing her. Why did you do that? She asked. Threaten war for me? You said it yourself, I'm valuable because of my gift. But you made that threat before you even knew if I'd agree to stay, before you knew if the visions would continue. Why risk political complications for a nobody Omega? Because you weren't nobody to the hundreds of wolves whose lives you saved, Vincent said simply. And because I keep my promises. I told you I'd protect you, Kayla. That wasn't conditional on your usefulness or your cooperation. It was absolute. Something warm and dangerous unfurled in Kayla's chest, a feeling she'd learned to suppress years ago because hope was a luxury Omegas couldn't afford. But sitting here, with the Alpha King looking at her like she actually mattered, it was hard not to feel it anyway. There's something else, Vincent continued, his expression growing more serious. I've been receiving letters from Silvercrest. From your former pack. Dread replaced the warmth. What kind of letters? Demands for your return, mostly. Alpha Silvercrest claims your pack property, that removing you without his permission was theft. He's threatening to bring the matter before the Council of Alphas. Vincent's jaw tightened. And your former mate has been particularly vocal. Kayla's stomach dropped. Marcus? He's claiming the mate bond gives him rights to you, that your rejection wasn't properly completed because you fled before the formal severing ceremony. He wants you returned to complete the process. Which was bullshit, and they both knew it. Mate bonds could be severed with words alone. Marcus had rejected her publicly and completely. There was no formal ceremony required, no additional paperwork needed. He was grasping at legal technicalities because he heard about the Oracle blood, Kayla realized. nausea rising in her throat. He heard I'm valuable now and he wants me back. Not because he actually wants me, but because having an oracle mate would increase his status. That's my assessment as well, Vincent agreed grimly. The question is, what do you want to do about it? What can I do? Kayla asked helplessly. If the Council of Alphas gets involved, if they rule that I have to go back, then I'll tell the Council of Alphas to fuck off, Vincent said pleasantly. But I'd prefer not to start a political crisis if we can avoid it. Which is why I'm asking you, do you want to formally sever your connection to Silvercrest? Renounce your pack ties and swear loyalty to Blackthorn? Kayla's heart hammered. Renouncing pack ties was serious. It meant cutting all bonds to your birth pack, becoming essentially a lone wolf until you swore new allegiance. It was rare, reserved for wolves who'd been exiled or who'd committed unforgivable crimes. But it would also mean Silvercrest would have no claim on her whatsoever. If I do that, Kayla said slowly, Marcus can't use the mate bond as leverage anymore. Silvercrest can't demand my return based on pack law. I'd be yours, she flushed, realizing how that sounded. I mean, Blackthorn's. Legally. Completely. Exactly, Vincent confirmed. It's a permanent solution. But I won't force you. This has to be your choice. Kayla thought of Silvercrest, the pack that had dismissed her, mocked her, treated her like defective goods her entire life. The pack that had laughed when Marcus rejected her, that had ignored her warnings even when children's lives were at stake. The pack that wanted her back now only because she'd become valuable, not because they'd ever actually valued her. Then she thought of Blackthorn, the pack that had listened, believed, protected. The pack where warriors nodded respectfully when she passed, where her visions were treated as gifts instead of delusions. The pack where the Alpha King himself sat with her for hours, helping her understand her abilities, never making her feel like she was taking up too much space or asking for too much consideration. It wasn't even a hard choice. I want to renounce Silvercrest, Kayla said firmly. I want to swear loyalty to Blackthorn. If you'll have me. Vincent's expression flickered with something that might have been satisfaction. The ceremony can be arranged for tonight. It's traditionally done under the full moon, with the pack as witnesses. Are you sure you're ready for that? Public ceremonies and all. Kayla swallowed hard. Public meant everyone watching. Public meant standing in front of hundreds of wolves and declaring her allegiance, letting them see her gray eyes and Omega status, and all the things that had made her worthless in Silvercrest. But public also meant Marcus couldn't contest it later. Meant Silvercrest couldn't claim the ceremony was coerced or invalid. Meant this would be real, binding, permanent. I'm ready, she said, surprised to find it was true. I'm tired of hiding. Tired of being invisible. If I'm going to be your court oracle, I should probably let the pack actually see me. That's the spirit, Vincent said with approval. He stood, offering her his hand. Come on. Let's get you ready to officially become one of us. Kayla took his hand, feeling the warmth and strength in his grip, and let him pull her to her feet. As they walked through the compound toward the ceremony grounds, pack members stopped and stared, not with mockery or dismissal, but with curiosity and respect. Oracle, they murmured. Blessed one. Savior. And for the first time in her life, Kayla didn't try to make herself smaller. Didn't lower her eyes or hunch her shoulders or apologize for existing. She walked beside the Alpha King with her head up and her spine straight, ready to claim the life she'd nearly died to find. Tonight, she would stop being Kayla Gray of Silvercrest. Tonight, she would become something new. And nothing, not Marcus, not her former pack, not even her own lingering doubts, would take that away from her. Chapter 5. The Bond That Breaks All Rules. The full moon hung fat and silver over Blackthorn territory, casting everything in shades of pearl and shadow. Kayla stood at the edge of the ceremony grounds, her hands trembling despite her best efforts to steady them. Nervous? Lyra appeared at her elbow, resplendent in formal leathers that marked her as the Alpha King's second. Don't be. This pack is predisposed to love you. You saved their children, after all. Mothers are very forgiving of social awkwardness when you've kept their babies alive. I'm not worried about awkwardness, Kayla admitted. I'm worried about everything else. What if I mess up the oath? What if my wolf is too weak to complete the bond? What if? What if you take a deep breath and trust that Vincent knows what he's doing? Lyra interrupted gently. He's performed hundreds of loyalty ceremonies. You'll be fine. Easy for her to say. Lyra belonged here, was born to pack nobility, trained from birth to be second, comfortable in her power like a wolf was comfortable in its own fur. Kayla was still getting used to the idea that she was allowed to eat at the same tables as higher-ranked wolves, let alone stand before the entire pack and demand acceptance. The ceremony grounds were packed. Hundreds of wolves in both human and animal forms had gathered, their eyes gleaming in the moonlight, their anticipation palpable. Kayla could feel their attention like a physical weight, curious, assessing, waiting to see if the Omega Oracle was everything the rumors claimed. Vincent stood at the center of it all, and Kayla's breath caught. She'd seen the Alpha King in casual clothes, in training leathers, even in the simple cotton shirt he'd worn during her recovery. But tonight he wore the formal regalia of his position, midnight blue leather embossed with silver, a cloak that seemed to drink shadows, and a crown of twisted iron that somehow looked both ancient and alive. He looked like every story about kings ever told, like power given flesh, like something that should have been myth, but had decided to be real just to prove it could. Their eyes met across the crowd, and Vincent beckoned her forward. The sea of wolves parted as Kayla walked, her borrowed ceremonial dress flowing around her ankles. Lyra had insisted she dress appropriately. You're about to become court oracle officially. Looking like a vagrant sends the wrong message, and had provided a gown of deep green that somehow made Kayla's gray eyes look almost silver in the moonlight. Still Omega eyes. Still wrong by Silvercrest standards. But tonight, under this moon, with this pack watching, Kayla refused to be ashamed of them. She reached Vincent and dropped into the traditional supplicant's kneel, her head bowed, her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Kayla Gray of Silvercrest, Vincent's voice rang out across the grounds, formal and commanding. You come before Blackthorn requesting release from your birth pack and acceptance into ours. State your reasons. This was it. The moment where she either claimed her future or lost it forever. Kayla raised her head, meeting Vincent's golden eyes, and spoke the words she'd practiced with Lyra a dozen times. I come before Blackthorn because my birth pack has forsaken me. They dismissed my warnings, mocked my gifts, and valued status over truth. When I tried to save lives, they called me delusional. When I sought help to prevent a massacre, they called me broken. Her voice grew stronger, carrying across the silent crowd. I come before Blackthorn because here I am valued. Here, my gifts are honored instead of hidden. Here, I am protected instead of punished. And what do you offer in return for this acceptance? Vincent asked, following the ritual format. What can an Omega from a lesser pack offer the wolves of Blackthorn? Someone in the crowd snickered, quickly silenced by a growl from nearby alphas, but Kayla didn't let it shake her. I offer my sight, she said clearly. My visions. My ability to see dangers before they strike, to warn of ambushes, to protect this pack as I once failed to protect my own. I offer my loyalty, absolute and unwavering. And I offer my oath that I will use every gift the moon goddess gave me to keep Blackthorn safe, even if it costs me my life. The crowd murmured impressed, she thought, though she didn't dare look away from Vincent to check. Your gifts are considerable, Vincent acknowledged. Your courage proven. Your loyalty. He paused, and something shifted in his expression, something that made Kayla's breath catch, already beyond question. I accept your oath, Kayla Gray. But know this. Once you swear loyalty to Blackthorn, once you accept me as your alpha, there is no going back. Your old pack will have no claim on you. Your former ties will be severed completely. You will be mine, he corrected smoothly, ours. Blackthorn's oracle. Blackthorn's protector. Blackthorn's wolf. Is this what you want? Kayla didn't hesitate. Yes. Then speak the oath. She took a deep breath and recited the ancient words Lyra had taught her, feeling power gather with each syllable. I, Kayla Gray, do hereby renounce all ties to Silvercrest Pack. I sever bonds of blood and loyalty, of debt and obligation. I cast off the name I bore and the rank I held. Before the moon goddess and this gathering, I declare myself free of past allegiance." The air around her shimmered, and Kayla felt something inside her snap, not painfully, but with a sense of finality. The last thread connecting her to Silvercrest dissolved like morning mist, leaving her untethered. Alone. Free. I, Kayla, do hereby swear loyalty to Blackthorn Pack, she continued, her voice strong despite the tears threatening to fall. I pledge my gifts, my strength, my life to the protection and service of these wolves. I accept Vincent Blackthorn as my alpha, his word is law, his protection is sacred. I bind myself to this pack in moon and shadow, in blood and bone, until death releases me from my oath. The power that had been gathering suddenly moved, flowing from Kayla like a river finding the sea. It reached for Vincent, and she felt his own power rise to meet it, immense, ancient, so vast it should have crushed her beneath its weight. But instead of crushing, it cradled. Instead of overwhelming, it welcomed. The pack bond settled around Kayla like a warm blanket, and suddenly she could feel them, hundreds of wolves, their emotions a symphony of curiosity, approval, protective instinct. She was pack now. Really, truly pack. Not an outsider looking in, but a thread woven into the tapestry. And threading through it all, burning brighter than any other connection, was Vincent. The alpha bond was supposed to be respectful, professional. A leader's tie to their wolves, strong but impersonal. This was not that. This was intimate. Kayla could feel Vincent's approval, his satisfaction at her acceptance, his pride in her courage. But underneath it all was something else, something that felt like recognition, like two pieces that had been searching and finally clicked into place. Vincent's eyes widened fractionally, and Kayla knew he felt it too. "It is done," he announced to the crowd, his voice only slightly rougher than usual. "Blackthorn, welcome your oracle. Kayla, welcome home." The pack erupted in howls, wolves in animal form lifting their voices to the moon, humans cheering and stomping their approval. The sound washed over Kayla like a wave, and she found herself laughing and crying simultaneously, overwhelmed by the acceptance she'd never dared dream possible. Vincent reached down and pulled her to her feet, his hand warm and steady in hers. "Congratulations," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "You're officially stuck with us now." "I can think of worse fates," Kayla managed, still trying to process the feeling of belonging that thrummed through the pack bond. The celebration that followed was unlike anything Kayla had experienced. Warriors came forward to shake her hand, to thank her personally for the warning that saved their families. Mothers pressed gifts into her hands, carved wooden tokens, blessed herbs, promises of eternal gratitude. Children stared at her with wide eyes, whispering, "That's the oracle who saved us," with the kind of awe usually reserved for heroes in stories. And through it all, Vincent stayed close. Not hovering, the Alpha King didn't hover, but present. A steady warmth at her back, a reassuring presence whenever the crowd grew too much, a silent promise that she was protected here. Hours later, when the celebration had finally wound down and most of the pack had dispersed to their homes, Kayla found herself alone with Vincent on the balcony overlooking the grounds. She trailed off, not sure how to describe the overwhelming rightness of the ceremony, the feeling of finally belonging somewhere. Intense. Vincent supplied with a slight smile. "The first pack bond always is." "That's not what I was going to say." Kayla leaned against the railing, staring up at the moon that had witnessed her oath. "I was going to say it was perfect. Thank you. For believing me. For protecting me. For giving me a chance when everyone else wrote me off as broken." "You're not broken," Vincent said quietly, moving to stand beside her. "You're exactly what you're supposed to be. What you were always meant to be." "An oracle?" Kayla asked. "Or your wolf." The words came out before she could stop them, and she immediately wished she could take them back. Too presumptuous. Too familiar. The Alpha King had offered protection and acceptance, not both, Vincent said, and Kayla's head snapped toward him. "Did you feel it during the ceremony? The bond?" "I felt something," Kayla admitted carefully. "It was stronger than I expected. More personal." "That's because it is personal." Vincent turned to face her fully, his golden eyes intense in the moonlight. Pack bonds are collective, one alpha to many wolves, distributed and balanced. But what formed between us during your oath was different. Singular. Powerful. Kayla's pulse quickened. What are you saying? I'm saying the moon goddess has a twisted sense of humor, Vincent said wryly. I'm saying that the drunk deity who paired you with a beta who didn't deserve you appears to have sobered up long enough to give you a second chance. I'm saying. He took a breath, and for the first time since she'd met him, the Alpha King looked uncertain, that I think we're fated mates. The world tilted. Fated mates. The bond that transcended pack politics and social status, that the moon goddess herself forged between wolves meant to be together. The kind of connection that came along once in a lifetime if you were lucky, and never at all if you weren't. That's not possible, Kayla breathed. I already had a fated mate. Marcus, the bond, you can't get two fated mates. It doesn't work that way. Usually, Vincent agreed. But Oracle blood plays by different rules. Your rejection by Marcus might have been the moon goddess correcting a mistake, breaking a false bond to make room for a true one. He stepped closer, and Kayla's breath caught. Tell me you don't feel it, Kayla. Tell me this is just a normal pack bond, just alpha to wolf, and I'll never mention it again. But she couldn't tell him that. Because it was different, had been from the moment she'd grabbed his jacket with bloody hands and felt something click into place. The recognition. The rightness. The feeling of finally that had nothing to do with finding safety and everything to do with finding him. I feel it, she whispered. But Vincent. I'm an Omega. Gray eyes. Broken by rejection. I'm mine, Vincent interrupted, the word coming out possessive and absolute. If you'll have me. I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other. I know there are 1,000 reasons why an Alpha King taking an Omega Oracle as a fated mate will cause political complications. But Kayla. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. I've lived 243 years. I've met thousands of wolves. And I have never felt anything like what I feel when I'm near you. What do you feel? Kayla asked, her voice barely audible. Like I've been waiting, Vincent said simply. Like every decision I've made, every path I've walked, was leading me to that moment when you collapsed at my gates and grabbed my jacket with bloody hands and trusted me to keep you safe. Like protecting you isn't a duty, it's as essential as breathing. Tears slid down Kayla's cheeks, and this time she didn't try to stop them. I'm scared, she admitted. Marcus rejected me publicly, brutally. He made sure everyone knew I wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy. And I believed him, Vincent. I believed I was broken and defective and lucky anyone even looked at me. What if I'm not actually your fated mate? What if this is just gratitude or proximity or, Vincent interrupted gently, what if you're exactly who the moon goddess intended for me? What if your gray eyes are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen? What if your courage, your gift, your absolute refusal to give up even when the world told you that you were nothing, what if that's exactly what I need? You're an alpha king, Kayla protested weakly. You could have anyone. Any alpha female from any pack would. I don't want any alpha female from any pack, Vincent said, his voice firm. I want the Omega Oracle who crawled through hell to save my people. I want the wolf brave enough to swear loyalty in front of hundreds despite her fears. I want you, Kayla. If you'll have me. It was insane. Impossible. Everything about this violated pack hierarchies and social norms and basic common sense. But looking into Vincent's eyes, seeing the absolute certainty there, feeling the bond that hummed between them like a living thing, Kayla made her choice. Yes, she breathed. Yes, I'll have you. I'll be yours. Vincent kissed her before she could finish, and Kayla felt the bond explode between them. It was nothing like the failed connection she'd felt with Marcus that had been a weak thread, easily snapped. This was a steel cable, unbreakable and eternal. This was fate and choice and destiny wrapped together so tightly she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kayla felt tears streaming down her face. I thought I was broken, she whispered against Vincent's lips. Thought Marcus was right. That the moon goddess had made a mistake with me. The only mistake, Vincent said fiercely, was pairing you with someone too blind to see your worth. But I see it, Kayla. I see you. And I promise I will protect you, value you, treasure you for as long as I live. No one will ever make you feel worthless again. Not on my watch. That's a big promise, Kayla said with a watery laugh. I'm an alpha king, Vincent replied with a slight smile. I don't make small promises. As they stood together under the moon, the mate bond settling warm and right between them, Kayla thought back to that moment at the gates. The crawling, the pain, the desperate hope that someone, anyone, would listen. She'd used her last strength to warn the pack. And the Alpha King had promised to protect her forever. Turns out, forever was just getting started. And Kayla, rejected Omega, invisible nobody, broken wolf with gray eyes, was exactly where she was always meant to be. Home. Epilogue. 6 months later, Kayla stood in the war room, her hands pressed flat against the strategy table as another vision rolled through her. Eastern borders, she reported, her voice steady now, confident. Incursion planned for next Tuesday. 20 rogues, possibly testing our defenses for a larger group. Recommendations. Vincent asked from his position at the head of the table, every inch the Alpha King, even as his eyes tracked her with the kind of warmth reserved for mates. Double the guard rotation. Stage a visible patrol to discourage the attempt. Kayla pulled back from the vision, blinking as the present reasserted itself. They'll retreat if they think we're expecting them. Make it happen, Vincent ordered his security team, who nodded and dispersed to implement her suggestions. As the room cleared, Vincent rounded the table and pulled Kayla into his arms. Nice work, Oracle, he murmured against her hair. Just doing my job, Kayla replied, smiling against his chest. Someone has to keep this kingdom from falling apart. Have I mentioned today that you're brilliant? Once or twice. But I never get tired of hearing it. A knock at the door interrupted them, and Darius poked his head in, deliberately not looking at the way his alpha was wrapped around his mate. Sir, there's a delegation from Silvercrest at the gates. They're requesting an audience with the Oracle. Vincent's arms tightened protectively. Did they say what they want? Apparently Alpha Silvercrest wishes to formally apologize for his treatment of Lady Kayla and request her counsel on some visions their seers have been having. Darius's expression suggested what he thought of that particular request. Should I tell them she's unavailable? Kayla felt Vincent's growl rumble through his chest, felt his instinct to protect her from anything connected to her painful past. But she also felt something else, her own strength, hard-won and finally unshakable. No, she said quietly. I'll see them. On my terms, in my territory, with my mate beside me. She looked up at Vincent, her gray eyes, which she'd learned to see as unique rather than defective, gleaming with determination. They dismissed me when I was powerless. Let them see what they threw away. Vincent's expression shifted into something that was half pride, half fierce satisfaction. That's my mate, he said with approval. Shall we go remind Silvercrest what happens when you underestimate an Omega Oracle? Let's, Kayla agreed. As they walked toward the throne room to receive the delegation that had once considered her worthless, Kayla thought about the girl who'd crawled to these gates 6 months ago. That girl had been broken, desperate, and convinced she was nothing. This woman, Oracle, mate to an Alpha King, protector of an entire kingdom, knew better. She'd used her last strength to warn the pack. And the Alpha King had promised to protect her forever. Turns out, they'd both kept their promises. And in doing so, they'd found something neither had expected, a love that defied rules, transcended status, and proved that sometimes the moon goddess really did know what she was doing. Even if she had to get drunk first to make it happen. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification, because I'll be dropping a hotter story tomorrow.